Welcome to the Burgundy Gold Knuckleheads podcast. As always, you know who's riding shotgun. It's my main man, Reggie. What's going on, Reg?
Yeah, what's going on, man? I'm riding shotgun today, but man, your boy is trying to stay warm, man. This Arctic blast cold front that's come down from Canada
Yeah.
is here. It's here. And for us living here in the South, we're not used to single digit temperatures, man. And so I'm trying to stay warm here and here in Dallas, and hopefully I get to stay home tomorrow from work.
Well, I'll be going in the office. I think. I think you're going to hold off, and everything's going to be good. But you know, you're riding shotgun, but we got a special guest today with us, Reg. You want to go ahead and introduce who we got on board?
Yeah, man. We have one of our great friends here, Mr. Lou Holder. I'm sorry, Lou. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So for all of our listeners out there, we appreciate you tuning in. And Lou was gracious with his time to give us a little bit of time and just talk Commanders. I mean, Lou, I'm going to give you your flowers here. We talked about it a little bit here, so folks, bear with me here. Lou's got a good bio. I'm not going to give all of it, but I'm going to give you some meat to it. So I'm going to read here. Lou is an Emmy Award-winning sports personality, notable public speaker and teacher. He has a very successful and extensive career as a sports anchor, reporter working on all major networks, all across television. Lou has won an Emmy for outstanding sports reporting in 2003. He has a wide sports coverage, has included both major championship events affiliated with the NFL, the PGA, Major League Baseball, National Basketball Association, also known as NBA, and the NCAA. Lou belongs to many organizations, including the National Association of Black Sports Professionals and the National Association of Black Journalists. Lou holds a master's degree in sports administration and a bachelor's degree in communications. So Lou, doing all of his work, has had the privilege during his career to interview some impressive people. That list includes personalities such as Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant, John Thompson, Joe Gibbs, Venus and Serena Williams, David Beckham, and Mike Tyson, to name a few. And yet he's here to lend some of his time to speak with your boys, Ken and Reggie. Lou, welcome to the show.
Man, thanks for that, man. Where do I send it? Where do I send your payment?
Hey, man, that's all you. That's all you,
that...
man. We want to make sure people understand, man, you know, who we have on the show and that you were gracious enough to give us a little bit of your time, man. So we appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys and all that you do.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, you know, Rich and I, we've talked about it before. We live in Dallas. We were season ticket holders last year, season ticket holders again this coming year. And so we've gone to games, and through the connections of this time happened to be Candy, right? We were able to meet Lou, and not only did we meet Lou at the game, but it was the game.
That's right.
Right. And I don't, you know, if you're listening and you're a Commanders fan, you know what game I'm talking about last year. We were at the game against Chicago. And it was a great season, great game to meet you at. And you know, as we look at the season, Lou, was there a more exciting season ever for the Washington Commanders? I mean, we didn't win the Super Bowl, but short of winning the Super Bowl, was there ever a more exciting season in your view?
So I have to say, when Joe Gibbs came back and the Commanders, the Redskins at that time, went on that run with Clinton Portis and Santana Moss and Sean Taylor that got them into the playoffs. And they beat Tampa Bay and then lost to Seattle. That for me was the most exciting for me because one, it was Joe Jackson Gibbs, Sean Taylor. I mean, it was just phenomenal. The whole run, each week, Clinton Portis was coming out dressed as a different character, from Sheriff Gonna Get You to Coach Janky Spanky. And I mean, there was so much energy in the building, from Mike Sellers to that defense and Ryan Clark, who's now on ESPN there was so much going on there, all under the umbrella of it was Joe Jackson Gibbs on the sideline again. For people who, know Washington football, I mean, that's the greatest leader of men that there is in professional sports. I mean, he's in 2 Hall of Fames.
Right.
So, I mean, to be able to cover Joe Jackson Gibbs and everything, even though it was 2.0 and it wasn't all of the finest, but I mean, again, just the aura of that man coaching a football team, and that team needed to win like 6 or 7 games just to get in. It started in St. Louis with the Rams, and then they just Arizona, and they just kept winning football games, and they got in. I would say, to me, that was, in my covering the team, that was the most exciting run for me. But this one, a close second.
Fair enough.
A close second. Because
A lot of characters on that team
Yeah.
as well, right?
Yeah, because of the reboot, and because of how deep this franchise had been in an abyss, for it to happen the way it did, and all those exciting games that we watched, and just the talent that was on the team. This is a close second for me.
Okay.
Very good.
I was going to say, what about the RG3 2012 year?
Nah.
No. Okay.
That's just one player. That was just one player. This was a multitude of players, and there was so much drama. Again, I am so glad to now cover a football team and not a circus.
Right.
And those RG3 years was an absolute circus.
Well, let me say, as a fan, we enjoyed the success on the field, but it didn't come without, to your point, the circus off the field. And as a fan, we had to account for that, right? Right. Just no different than all of the years after that, or during the Dan Snyder era. And I know we're not going to get into all of that, but as a fan, we still had to account for all of that. It was always, yeah, you guys got some good players, or you have a decent team, but it was always about the owner. Yeah, but your owner, right? And so to your point, the RG3 year was great in terms of what we thought we were going to have over the next 10 years. But then all of the stuff that was happening behind the scenes there with that organization and the team and some of the players obviously was not great.
Right. And there was also that angst, that all that we gave up for that one player just had a lot of people on edge.
And then the cap hit. Remember, we got penalized with the cap.
Yeah.
36
so there was just a lot of things there, and you knew. I mean, the fans knew because we knew first. When you're inside the building as a reporter and as a journalist, and understood that RG3 was the owner's pick, but it wasn't the coach's pick. They really like Kirk Cousins, and you can see that when Kirk Cousins finally came in, he was better suited for what the Shanahans wanted to do. So this is power struggle on which quarterback, and the way they rushed him back, the way he wanted to get back, because he knew. Robert Griffin III also knew that this was, although the owner wanted him, the coaches wanted somebody else. So although there was flashes of brilliance and flashes of really, really good football, while they were figuring out how to guard or how to defend against this Heisman Trophy winner that was a track star playing quarterback, after all of that, people who had to cover it and knew all the storylines and the nonverbals that we saw, it just was that's not one of the more memorable times for me. That all those coaches that left that were on that staff, that was the memorable part for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, things look like they've turned the corner for the better. Obviously, with new ownership, new GM, new head coach, and then we now have the wonder kid, Jake Danks. I don't think we have to deal with any of that going forward. I think we have true, competent ownership and front office, and we can look like a real NFL franchise. And as a fan, that is something good that we can take to the bank. We can talk to our friends, and we can feel good about we're a legit team. Because when we watch during the offseason and all of the other stuff that's happening, it's not us. Yeah. It's Jacksonville, right? It's Cleveland and all the other stuff that's happening with these other organizations, and it's no longer us. So good deal.
And again, when you said fan stands for short for fanatic, and this area has been fanatical about their football, and I don't I don't say that you should live in the past, because you shouldn't really live in the past. But when you see your past now become your present and your future, you do get a little excited. And people
Absolutely.
around here knew that the Jack Kent Cooke, Bobby Beathard, Joe Gibbs trio worked out pretty well. Two of them have gold jackets, right?
Wow.
So
Yep.
when you see the owner, right, getting it all together there, and then you see Adam Peters, who is the Bobby Beathard, and you see the Quinn, who is the Joe Gibbs, you can't help but get a little bit excited, because it's not a one-hit wonder, a flash in the pan. This is the beginning of a very, very long quality run because of the three people that I just named. Right? If you get the owner and you get the GM and you get the head coach all on the same page, and that's very rare in the NFL, that a brand new owner gets to pick his GM, the GM gets to pick his head coach, the head coach they all get to pick the number 2 pick in the draft that they all wanted. That is the big deal. That we have had so many quarterbacks that have come through Washington that haven't had all 3 of those major people, and the offensive coordinator and Cliff Kingsbury. All 4 of those people wanted the same guy.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened here.
Well,
that
this
hasn't
looks
happened in Washington for a long, long time. That all 4 of those major pieces, owner, GM, head coach, and offensive coordinator, all wanted the same guy, right? Wow. And so you go in there, if you're Jaden Daniels, you go in there and you know that you have the universal support of the 4 people that matter the most. It makes you play cleaner. It makes you play freer. Everything was in play. So that's the reason why you should be excited as a fan base, not because they overachieved this year and won more games than any of us ever imagined, but this was playing with house money. This was a year ahead of schedule, right? So now, because of the things that I just mentioned, you don't have to worry about foolishness, about FBI people raiding your building, about sex scandals. You don't have to worry about any of that. You can actually, as a fan, as a reporter, as a media member, as a podcaster, whatever you want to call it, whatever entity you're doing, you can now actually talk about football instead of foolishness, right?
Golly,
There's no more drama in the DMV.
I forgot all about the FBI raids and stuff. Holy cow! Yeah. All right. Well, let's pivot. Let's pivot, man. Because
Lou brings up receipts and things that you
kind of forgot.
It's not that you forgot. It's you move them into the dirty file. Like don't open that drawer. Don't open that drawer. We got too much stuff here.
Well, let me ask you this, Lou. You mentioned here that we were playing with house money, and we talked about the expectations. So, what were your expectations back in August, per se, before the season started, compared to how the season unfolded for us?
Well, my expectations were to double the win total from the year before. People that know football and people that understand football know that this was a better than 4-win football team the year before. They were just badly coached. It was just bad coaching. There's no way all that talent could have been that bad, right? So I'm saying that, okay, I gave them at least 8 wins. That was me. That was my expectation, that they were going to double their win total, because I feel that they shouldn't have been a 4-win, but you are what your record says you are. But they were better than a 4-win football team. And my expectations were that we would have competent football decisions being made during the game. Like, we weren't going to lose because of dumb stuff. We were just going to lose because the other teams were better, right? So my expectations that we were going to be in games and that we would win at least 8 of them, check and check. This team did both.
Okay. All right. Good. Ken, you got something for Lou?
Well, talking about, obviously the season exceeded because of what Jaden Daniels was, right? We all, I didn't hear anybody say that it was a mistake to pick Jaden Daniels. Some people might have liked Drake May or something a little bit more, but nobody was knocking Jaden Daniels. And then we got here and he was, what we saw. Is there any way that he slips back? I mean, because he was close. I mean, even during the games, he was consistently an accurate passer, in control of the game. And then when things tightened up, other people were tightening up, but not Jaden. That's when he was his smoothest. We saw, what, and the only reason why I say that, I don't really like comparing him to RG3 because they're totally different. But the expectations we had with RG3 potentially in year 2 was that he's only going to get better, right? Is there any way that, in your opinion, that Jaden Daniels slides back? Not wins and losses. I'm just talking from a performance perspective, that he slides back at all.
I mean, I think that's inevitable. I mean, people figure you out, right? They figure you out, and that's his job to. Because you think about the whirlwind that he went from, the Heisman Trophy, the long season, the draft, or whatever. I mean, he really just was trying to get his legs underneath him, right? So you think with a whole off season and understanding, he's going to bulk up and things. But there's certain things that you just can't control. Like defensive coordinators are going to figure you out. Things are going to happen. But I will say the exciting part of it is last year was the worst team that Jaden Daniels will play on.
Correct.
It's only going to get better around him, right? Because we have, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, competent leadership that's going to put the right parts around him. That's the worst team that Jaden Daniels is going to play around, because you think about it, first year for Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and that whole group was, almost like when you buy a house, right? The first year basically was an inspection year. Just find out, what do you got? What do you got? What are you looking at? Whatever. Now comes the remodeling.
Right.
Now comes the remodeling where you start busting open things, making holes, doing whatever you have to. And in that remodeling, guys, there is a beautiful, glorious window that is closing as we speak, and that is a franchise quarterback on a rookie deal, with goo gobs of cap space, 7 draft picks, and a genius that is at the head, at the controls, bringing in people, and a franchise that has gone from a dump to a destination.
Yes.
So now you have a lot of stuff going for you, and you have that window. And the window is now open. The window is open now, and now's the time to start pouncing, right? And with that is going to mask what you said. That is going to mask maybe some of the regression that this second-year quarterback may have, because he's going to have more talent around him. And the thing about it is, seeing him in the media, talking to him, he is the most even-keel person that you will ever meet. And I kind of like that in your quarterback. I don't want somebody that's on social media, that's up and down and everything like that. You would never know where we are in a football game, almost like with Jalen Hurts with the Eagles. You just never know with Jaden Daniels where we are in a media scrum, after a game, win, losses, whatever. You just never know, because he's always the same. He's medium. Yeah. And you kind of like that. But he's going to struggle. I mean, that's just par for the course in the NFL.
And bringing all the coaching staff back does nothing but help his growth, right? Correct. And it's not just the coaching staff, it's the certain people on the coaching staff. Like, you're going to lose people, but you do not want to lose that offensive and that defensive coordinator. Right. I mean, that's why Glenn and Johnson over at Detroit were so highly coveted, because they were coming back after a big, huge run to get to the Super Bowl, and they were back. Right. So you want your quarterback and you want your defense to be in the same system at least for 2 years. Yeah. Now, both of those gentlemen, Witt and Kingsbury, probably going to be gone next year, after next year, if the performances, Kingsbury more than Witt, but you just never know. But that helps.
That helps. But remember, you also had a former head coach in Glant, the one that was in with the Rams or the Chargers.
Yeah, Chargers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So God, I'm drawing a blank on his name. The running back, run game coordinator guy.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm drawing a blank.
So there was a lot of coaches on there, a lot of high quality coaches on there that were in position, position coaches that you might lose as well.
Yeah. Well, you've kind of answered it slightly there a little bit. One of my questions, and that was going to be with Jayton's success, and that clearly he seems to be the guy, right? And so that we are ahead of the game in year one. So do you think that Adam Peters would continue to build through the draft the way they said they would, build through the draft, supplement through free agency, or would they now say, hey, we're ahead of the game here, let's go all in? And you kind of alluded to it, so I'm going to assume you think that Adam Peters should go all in on this situation.
No, I think first of all, it was Anthony Lynn. That was the name of the person
that's
that I was thinking of.
Former head coach for the Chargers.
Yeah. Pardon me on that one. That was just, but yeah, he's great coach. And I just feel that he might be plucked to get another head coaching job as well if things happen. But I think that the reason why Adam Peters took this job, one is you knew that you were going to have the number 2 pick in the draft.
Come here.
Right? You knew that you were going to have a lot of cap space. And you also knew that you were going to have draft picks, right? Adam Peters loved draft picks. I mean, it did pretty good. I mean, not just Jaden Daniels, Mikey Sanders still. Johnny Newton was coming on at the end because, remember, he had those foot injuries.
Correct.
Brandon Coleman. Wow. What? I mean, after Daniels, the most important piece that you wanted was somebody that was going to help on that offensive line. So you got those 4 that have shown up. I mean, I was a little disappointed. I was waiting for more from Ben Sinnott because I thought that would have been kind of like the Chris Cooley type of thing that we needed. But then again, when you have Zach Ertz, you got some time to play with. So hopefully that there'll be a rise with Ben Sinnott. And Luke McCaffrey's just that Swiss Army knife that Adam Peters knew from his brother and things of that nature. So you got 7 draft picks. I think that Adam Peters is going to go all in and not even spend all the cap space, but be very, very miserly and know what you need and then fill it in with draft picks. I wouldn't even be surprised if they move out of the first round and move down to get more picks, right? Because you can get some in the 4th. I mean, it all depends on what they're looking for or what they see best available at 29. Yeah. If you don't like that, I can see Adam Peters moving down.
Well, let me ask you this. I think a lot of us fans here, we look at the cap space and everyone says we have a ton of cap space. I think we're third most cap space, right? But at the same time, we have 29 free agents. So that money will be siphoned out of there fairly quickly just to re-sign and build out the roster, including some of the guys that were here this past season that they'll want to bring back. Maybe some of them on another 1-year deal, or maybe it's a 2 or 3 year deal. But it's not as if the team has its core and we have a ton of cap space to now build through free agency, because although we have the 3rd most cap space, I think I heard the stat behind Kansas City, we have the 2nd most number of free agents. So we got to spend some of that money, not just in free agency, but just on some of re-sign of our own players. So it seems like saying the most money isn't quite telling all the details of the cap space situation that we're in. So doesn't mean that we don't have the money to spend. I want to be clear, but it's not as if it's as much as it seems, if that makes sense.
Well, I would rather be in Washington's position than New Orleans that's over the cap already.
100%. 100%.
So it's like, and you got to think that Adam Peters knows what to do and who to bring back. And who's you're gonna let go and who you're gonna package and this and that. That's why it's so comforting to know that you don't have to worry about this, right? Even if you may not agree, it's Adam Peters. So let Adam cook.
Let him cook, man. And Adam we trust. That's kind of been our motto the whole time he's been here. In Adam we trust.
And
so.
to me, if you're putting in superlatives now, he's the most valuable person in the franchise for me. So I had people ask me this over who's the most valuable player and everything like that. I said most valuable player for me was Bobby Wagner. The most valuable person was Adam Peters. And the most unsung person on the team was center Tyler Biadasz. That was for me because he was the quarterback of that offensive line, and for that rookie to know that Tyler was running out, calling out defenses and everything like that, he stabilized not only that young man, he stabilized Allegretti, Coleman, Lucas, he Cosby, he settled all of that down. And that's the unsung stuff that we don't see. But he was the quarterback of that offensive line who over-exceeded. So, again, Adam Peters, Bobby Wagner, and Tyler Biadasz. So to have Adam Peters as the most valuable person in the organization, I just the future is just going to be very, very bright because he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, you get no argument from me. We felt like the most underrated signing and the most important signing in free agency to us was Tyler Biadasz. To us. Now, that's not to say that Wagner, Louvu, and all these guys were not important. It's just if we had to pick one, because what we feel like what Cliff was to the offense and what Tyler was to the line and to Jayton, because we saw what past few seasons when we had some rotation under the center, right? It's just different. Calling out schemes, calling out blocking, and solidifying the O-line. It was a huge difference for us because, again, Jayton was able to just get to the line and do what he needed to do, along with Cliff being a part of what he was doing with them, during the week, doing practice. We heard all the stories about how they watched film and how they both were in the building early and all those things, and the preparation that Cliff had for Jayton and Jayton's preparation of his own. He put in the work. We heard the stories from you guys, the amount of work that he put in weekly to be prepared for Sunday. But we thought, man, Tyler Biadasz's role on the line was probably one of the biggest and most important free agent signings, at least for us.
Okay, and for me, the reason why I say Bobby Wagner is, he has a Super Bowl ring. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, that's choosing to come here, right? A first ballot Hall of Famer. This team has been a rudderless ship for years, right? A lot of talent, but no leadership. Bobby Wagner comes in immediately. Everybody falls in tow, from Terry to Jonathan Allen to all the leaders that were under the Ron Rivera era. You have to bow down to somebody who has a Super Bowl ring, is still bringing it at that level, and chose to come here, right? He's going to Canton. Going to Canton, and he came here and led the team in tackles.
Yes. And here's the thing, Lou. We understand. We understand that
with time and space, and because this team needed a new culture and needed some leadership, that's to me why Bobby Wagner is not only the most important free agent signing this year, I would say arguably that because of the time and space and what this team needed, I could say you could argue that he was the most impactful and the most important free agent signing in the franchise's history.
Well, it was a great signing. No one's going to knock that. And I will tell you, Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, those guys don't come here under the old regime. Right. So we were very, very fortunate and happy that those guys were willing to come to DC and be a part of our organization, and the changes and the change that they've brought to our organization just this past season is unmeasurable. So we're happy to have them, because again, we don't typically get, or we overpay for the Austin Ecklers and the Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagners of the world, or they choose just not to come here. Right.
Yeah. Well, we talked about the some of the free agent signings and the draft picks that went through last year. There was one in-season move that we had with Marshawn Lattimore, kind of hot and cold in moments when he was on the field because he was dealing with a lot of injuries from the moment that he got here. How do you see Marshawn fitting in next year with the defense, having a whole off season and fitting in with the Joe Witt, and the regime here?
Yeah, I've gotten asked that question too. Some people have voiced their opinion to me that, man, I was like, look, you got to give this guy some time. I mean, just imagine if your child and you were uprooted and you had to go to a new school in the middle of the school year. I mean, you're just figuring out a whole bunch of stuff, right? And okay, so he struggled against Mike Evans and he struggled against AJ. Everybody would. Dude, those are two of the best receivers in the conference, right? But my question back to people was, would you have rather had Benjamin St-Juste on him, or would you rather had a half and person trying to figure out Marshawn Lattimore on him? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So be careful what you wish for, because the whole job of him was to make it so you wouldn't have to worry about that other receiver. Yeah, he struggled, but he was worried with a hamstring. And again, the people that he was covering that he had issues with, everybody's going to have issues with those guys.
Right. Absolutely.
Evans and Brown, come on. I mean, and people are like, how come he can't stop it? No one can stop them. Right? So Benjamin St-Juste was struggling. Mikey was doing his thing. So now, you got a healthy, you still got to get more parts, right? Yeah. He was brought here. Marshawn Lattimore was brought here for next season, right? For next season. And they got him with the Jahan Dotson and Ridgeway trades. That's how they got him. So again, I'm okay with letting this guy go through a whole season. Now, if we're back here and I'm on your podcast next year talking about the struggles that Marshawn Lattimore had, well, then we could talk about other things. But I think that it's not fair enough to this talent to come here in the middle of a school year, right, and try to figure out the hallways, the lunch, the whatever. That just wasn't the plan. So I think you got to give him a pass, a big time pass. Again, no one is going to be Champ Bailey, right? Nobody has been champ since he left here. So to ask somebody to be champ, that's just not realistic. So, but I think that as far as building, and while they get younger corners and things of that nature, and Mikey and Quan and all these guys start getting more and more confident in the secondary, that's why he was here. He was here to get infused into the culture and be ready for next year. So I know that a lot of people are kind of lukewarm and think that, man, what did we do there? Well, I just think that you don't have enough sample size yet, to me.
I would agree. And for the record, Ken and I were not crashing out on the Marshawn Lattimore trade. We think very much similar to your point here is that this is more of a trade for the next 2 years. He needed to get healthy. It looked like he was a little bit out of shape. I'm not going to say out of shape, but he wasn't football ready. It kind of came together toward the end. But again, I don't think he was fully healthy there. And in fact, I was a little concerned that he could make it worse out on the field. But we certainly are not two of the people that think that Adam Peters made a mistake by making the trade for Marshawn Lattimore. So we're good with it. We're good with it.
And to your point, they're going to give Marshawn another full off season and give him a shot. Some of the other pieces in the secondary that you talked about with Quan Martin and Mikey doing his thing over there. It kind of leads to free agency and their approach this year. We talked about how they're building, but also looking for good opportunities. In your opinion, what do you think that they should be addressing, one or two positions in free agency more so than the draft?
So the Super Bowl answered a lot of questions. And two of the questions that were answered where defense still wins championships and the running game still has a place in the NFL.
Absolutely.
And
100%, man.
That's the besides Kendrick Lamar's halftime show and all the other stuff, the two things that Super Bowl had taught you was that defense wins championships. I mean, they sacked the Kansas City quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, 6 times without blitzing, right? They sent just 4 and got there.
Yeah.
So what this team is lacking at the very, very top of the list for me, because of what you saw in the Super Bowl, is a disruptor on that defensive line. You cannot have Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu being your leading tacklers every single game.
Preach.
That's not going to work. That's
Preach.
not going to work. That's not going to work. 1, because of Bobby's age, and 2, your linebackers should not be your leading tacklers, right? So when you see Jalen Carter from the Eagles and all those guys just manhandling people and just disrupting stuff, that's what you need. Whether it's your Myles Garrett or whatever, this team in free agency needs to go after a disruptor. I like Jonathan Allen as a person. I like Daron Payne as a person. But yesterday's prices is not today's prices, right?
Right.
The ante has gone up.
Right.
The ante has gone up. That might have been well and good under Ron Rivera's structure, but now you got Adam P. I mean, you need, again, this window is now open.
Yeah.
And the window is now not just open for you to get more parts offensively. The window is now open for you to stop somebody.
And with that being said, what do you think the chances that neither one are here opening day next year in Payne and Allen? I don't want to be gloom and doom here, but Reggie and I, have said there's at least a 50-50 chance that both of them won't be here. I don't think both of them. I think one of them at least will not be here, and there's at least a 50-50 chance that neither will be here by way of trade, cut, whatever, because the numbers that they have versus the performance they're putting on the field.
Listen, Adam Peters is not tied to anybody here.
Yep.
Right.
See Emmanuel Forbes, see Jahan Dotson, get rid of all of them, right?
Jamin Davis.
Jamin Davis, get rid. None of these are Adam Peters' guys, right? Again, the first year was inspection. The second year now is the remodeling, right? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if both of those guys are gone.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I
wouldn't
agree.
be surprised because, again, I don't know how you can go through a game when your defensive linemen are not even in the stat sheet. That cannot happen. Like you, I applaud Allen trying to work his way back from injury and everything like that. I applaud that. Right. I do applaud that. But these 2 Alabama boys got paid a lot of money over the last couple of years, and I just think that the whether it's the stats or whatever, Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu come in here in year 1 and had more of an impact than these 2 guys that have been here for years.
Wow. Yeah. Except for the years right before they got paid, right?
Yeah. So
yeah.
I think that whoever it is that they bring in, I don't think that that defensive line was a challenge. It was a challenge. And if that defensive line could get stronger, then your secondary and everybody looks a little bit better when you can get to the quarterback. Again, the Philadelphia Eagles, that secondary wasn't the best. I mean, the Washington, they scored on, what was it, 50? That when they were here, when they came to Northwest Stadium, whoever the quarterback was, look, I mean, that defense struggled. They put up with 5 turnovers. They've won that game.
Yeah.
They won that game. So that defense,
36 on them.
That defense, they had some holes in it. But you when you got that front that's getting there, I'm telling you, I'm just so happy for somebody. I like defense. I'm just going to say it right now. The league was not only built on all those quarterbacks, it was built on the purple people eaters. It was built on the doomsday defense. It was built under the orange crush. It was built under all those. The defenses really, really mattered. And to know that in that Super Bowl, that the defense was the co-lead story in that Super Bowl, I was so happy. Because there were games where you were just like, yo, are you going to let the defense guys do anything?
Well, even under Joe Gibbs, his defenses weren't focused, but they were very solid defenses when they were winning Super Bowls, right? Yeah. They didn't get the credit. It was the offense that always got the credit, but there were some very solid defenses during the Joe Gibbs era.
Absolutely, man. Charles Mann, Dexter Manley, Darrell Green. Come on. I mean, you cannot tell the Washington story without those guys.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Monty Coleman. I mean, you can't tell the story without them. So that is where this team needs to focus. And I know Adam Peters is probably already 5-6 steps ahead of this podcast, knowing what he needs to do. But anybody who watched the Super Bowl, right? You're looking at it, one eye, you're just like, ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need some of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want some of that here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we've been saying, I was asking you because, the flashy pick is, people talking about getting a second wide receiver and everything that. And I've said, we need the lines, offensive line, defensive line to make it better. Obviously the glaring is defensive line, but everybody wants the shiny wide receiver, the shiny toy. But my point on that would be, look what Jaden Daniels did with Terry and some spare part wide receivers. That's not our problem, right? We need to run the ball a little bit better and stop people a little bit better.
Yeah.
That
goes to again, after and I agree with you that we all know, and you cannot overlook either in the draft or free agency, that this team needs a dog next to Terry McLaurin. We all know that, like the Noah Browns and the De'Ami Brown and the OZ and Crowder, they're all fine. But at some point because Terry's getting older in age too, you're going to need somebody who's going to spread the field and somebody who's going to be a dog in there. But to your point, the game of football is still never changed. If you can control the lines of scrimmage and you can run the football, right, and you can stop the other team from running the football, you're going to have a better chance of winning football games. And with Cosme and his injury and Allegretti getting older, you're going to need to get offensive linemen to help out Brandon Coleman and Tyler Biadasz. So offensive linemen, something that you also going to need. But to me, the glaring need that you need, they could not stop people. And Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louva did an unbelievable job, especially in that 3-game losing streak, of mentally not letting this team lose. But at some point, Bobby's getting a little older. You just need to have that defensive line that you have to game plan. People have to game plan for the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line.
Correct.
You don't have to do it for Washington, and that needs to change.
So let me just say this. So the first point I want to make is we need to come out of next season knowing that we have the next guy ready to take over when Terry moves on. We got to have that, because to your point, I think Terry was 29 and will be 30, or he's about to be 30. Right. So we need to have another guy. And right now that guy's not on the roster. The other question I was going to ask you, Lou, is we saw it here in Dallas with Dan Quinn and Joe Witt, and their last game here in Dallas was in the playoffs against Green Bay, and Green Bay just ran on them. And I understand that they've gone through the inspection, as you pointed out, and now it's time to remodel that defense. Is there any concern or truth to the fact that the scheme, it's not players, but it's the scheme of their defense that makes them vulnerable against the run? Because even when he was here in Dallas, they got pressure. They were able to play with the lead. They got a lot of pressure, return Micah Parsons, Lutz, and all those things when they had the number 1, number 2 offense here, and then they could just go after and pressure the quarterback on defense. But when it came time to stop somebody, they struggled against the run here in Dallas. And I know it's only year 1, but we're seeing the same pattern in Washington. Are you concerned that this is just a scheme problem and not a personnel problem?
So to me, I've always been under the impression it's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmys and the Joes. So you got to have the right people in there. And like I said, you couldn't stop the run because you had no Allen and Payne were on milk carton boxes. They were invisible. You were looking for them, right? So I don't think it's as much the X's and the O's as the Jimmys and the Joes. I mean, you got to have your talent in there. Again, there's certain things that you can move around, but at some point, there's certain things that are non-negotiable. You got to be able to stop the run. You have to have a disruptor in there that's just going to stop the run. Kansas City has it in Chris Jones. You saw that the Eagles had it in Carter. You look at all the teams that have been successful. You got somebody who's a clog up the middle to make other teams move it around, right? So it might be, again, I don't have as much experience with it. You guys may have because you've seen more. But I just think in year 1, when you're just really trying to get those parts. Now, again, like I said, when I'm on with you guys at the end of next year, if we're still seeing that they're having a problem stopping the run, we can revisit that then. But I just don't know enough of Witt, and I don't know enough of Witt and Quinn and what they learned in Dallas and what they have brought here together. I don't think I've seen enough of it yet. Fair because enough. They don't have their pieces to say, you know what, let's not send Frankie or a blitz, and let's just get there with our front 4. They haven't been able to do that. Right. So I think the verdict is still out with that.
The verdict is still, and that's fair. That's fair because I'm truly hoping that that they're going to make some changes to the defensive scheme in Washington versus what they had here in Dallas. But they still need to get the players in place in order to execute that new scheme that they're trying to do. Because clearly they had some problems stopping the run here on the Dallas Cowboys staff. I know it was kind of overshadowed by a lot of the sacks. The Deron Bland, leading the league in pick six. I think the year before that, I think it was what's the kid that came from Alabama that got paid? Diggs. Right, he led the league as a rookie in the interception. So, and then Micah Parsons was doing his thing. So the run game was kind of overshadowed by the flash plays with the INTs. But they still had issues stopping the run here. So again, I know it's year 1. I'm certainly not, just like I'm not out on the Marshawn Lattimore deal. I'm certainly not knocking those coaches. It's just something that I've noticed that has followed them to Washington. Mm-hmm. But again, they have to get a little bit better. Quality of players there in DC on the defensive side. So
right. And I do remember a couple of the press conferences that we had. We get to speak with the offensive and the defensive coordinators every Thursday. We get to speak to them. Mm-hmm. And I remember Witt saying that the 2 things that he wanted from his defense down the stretch was to stop the run and produce the football. And to your point, they were surprisingly very good at producing the football, turning that ball over when they needed to. Mm-hmm. That pick 6 in that Detroit game, just things that have just happened that kind of mirror the Bland and kind of mirror the Diggs that you saw there. But stopping that run was an issue. Yeah, but again, that's why it was so disappointing to me that. You couldn't get more out of Payne and Allen. There's no way around it. I like the both of them as individuals, but that was under Ron Rivera. That was when everybody was, Now you got people coming up, like these young boys are coming up, and you saw the Alabama boys, do their thing for the Eagles. We need the Alabama boys to do stuff here, and that includes
Georgia boys,
the Georgia boys in Philly, and the Alabama boys.
But I'm talking Alabama boys with Hurts and Smith, all the Alabama boys, all that talent came up.
Right.
But with this team, and now I'm throwing in Brian Robinson as well, right? I mean, that run game, you needed Eckler to be the flash in the pan with Robinson, but now you're starting to see how much can you get out of Brian Robinson? What kind of running back is he? And that running game, again, the Super Bowl taught you two things: that the demise of the running game is overrated.
Absolutely. Look at Detroit.
That running game is still as vibrant as it needs to be, thanks to one Saquon Barkley.
And look at the kid. Look at the kid in Detroit, right?
Yes,
he was a very much part of their offense.
Yes,
and the success they were having there in Detroit. So, wow, man, I tell you. Well, this offseason here is upon us. I know that I think the combine is coming up, and then of course free agency is around the corner and things of that nature. Before we wrap this up here, I'll just say this: I will be a little bit surprised if Adam Peters spend big, meaning spending big money on the big name free agent. I'd be surprised. I know he will build through, supplement through free agency as he said, but the T. Higgins, the Myles Garrett, I love the fact that all these guys are going to be tied to Washington, because in years past that's not been the case. But I would be surprised if either of those guys here. I have no doubt they're going to kick the tires on it. They're going to talk to those organizations and see what the cost is. But I would be surprised if they bring those guys here. I'd be surprised.
Yeah, the Myles Garrett, I wouldn't be as surprised, because, I mean, you have all that cap space and you have things that you need to, again, I think the urgency of that window now, if Jaden Daniels struggled and some other things, you'd be like, but he has not struggled at all. And your window now is accelerated because of that young man. And free agents are going to want to come here. And whether it's Myles Garrett or somebody else, I would spend big on defense before I spent big on offense.
I agree, 100%. 100%.
The T. Higgins, insert any wide receiver that's asking for $30 million a year or whatever. There's no way Adam Peters does that, because they can, with Cliff Kingsbury, they can get the best out of what they have.
Right. Well, we saw it last year, right? Diamond Brown, Noah Brown, OZ, right? Crowder, all those guys were able to put up some numbers to help offensively. At one point, we were the top 5 offense scoring offense in the league. So to your point, I don't think they need to spend big on the wide receiver. I would spend that money on the defensive side myself, because again, the 4 first-round pick thing that we had here the past few years, man, that was an absolute failure in my opinion. Between Montez Sweat, Chase Young, Deron Payne, and John Allen. But I feel good about the people making those decisions today, that the people that they bring in, I think we'll get a lot more production out of the talent that's going to be wearing the Burgundy Gold. So I'm for it. But you said that you wouldn't be surprised with the Myles Garrett. Right before we let you out of here, I'll ask you this: what do you think the price or the package is going to be to trade for that player? Because they're going to have to give up something for him, right?
Well, I'll give you Payne and Allen right now, brother.
Yes, sir.
You've been listening to me, haven't you, Lou?
I'll give you Payne, Allen, and something else.
Yes.
Bring that boy in here. Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely. Man.
But yeah, I don't. That's a good question. I don't really know what those numbers would be. But again, whether you move some monies around and whatever, I mean, again, the fact that you have a competent GM that knows what he's doing, if you don't go after and don't get Myles Garrett, you can actually sit back and say, okay, all right, we'll see what he does.
Right.
Versus, no, what are you doing?
Right.
You're like, all right,
he may know something we don't.
Just think of this. The San Francisco 49ers were in the last couple of NFC championship games, right? He comes here and they're in the NFC Championship game. The common denominator is that guy. So, and Adam, I trust, and it's one of the things that, thank goodness that we actually have somebody that whatever he does, but he understands. That's why they traded for Lattimore.
Yes,
that's why they traded for Lattimore. He knew what they needed. And again, they're just kicking the tires now. They're just kicking the tires, and they got again. And the thing I love about it, guys, is that in 1 year, people ask me, what was the moment that you knew that this franchise was turning things around? And for me, it was when the media we heard of, and we got news that all the players were together in the bubble, and they were all carrying these big, huge logs together, right? And they were all black, white, position players, whatever. They were all carrying these logs, right? You can look at all the social media that I have put out. That, to me, when I saw and heard of that and knew that the culture was changing, that everybody, because if you need all of those guys to carry this log, right? And that's the way it was the entire season. They all were there for one another. And the sayings that you heard, that without the people buying in, they're just words, but there's anywhere, anytime, any place, right? There was arrive violently. You could see it all over the building, because when we went to Ashburn, it wasn't much going on, but the way they have remodeled the insides of that place to have motivational sayings and things of that nature, that's how I knew that the culture was actually changing, right? Wow. And so to know that those people, the person that comes in, the Myles Garrett, the Marshawn Lattimore, whoever is coming in free agency, has to now fall in and buy into this culture that has been built by that last season's team. And it was built so quickly that that's probably the more impressive part of this whole thing. Not so much the play on the field, but the fact that these guys galvanized so quickly as a unit that they became a standard now for anybody that comes in now. This is now the standard.
Mm-hmm. And that's where great players want to go.
Huh?
That's where great players want to go, to that environment as well, right? We talk about, you brought up earlier about Wagner coming in. People want to play in that environment, even if you're an average player, much less a great player. Great players definitely want to be there in that environment, to your point.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but before I leave, can I just take a license to say this one thing? I think that during this Black History Month, I would like to shout out one of the things that I enjoyed most about this season was, again, the most valuable person to this franchise was Adam Peters. And to me, one of the things that he did that was so paramount for people who know and understand football in this town was maybe even before he hired Dan Quinn, he made sure that he tapped in to the expertise and the legend that is Doug Williams. Okay. Right. They knew that they were going to draft this young quarterback, and they knew that he was going to need to be a mentor. Right. And what he has done to be there for Jaden Daniels is another thing that nobody really talks about. But Doug Williams being embraced and being there. You look around, the very first game of the season, the Tampa Bay game, Jaden Daniels was wearing a Doug Williams jersey. That's right. You saw after the Arizona game how they were hugging and embracing. This is a true mentor-mentee. Nobody knows better how to play quarterback for the Washington franchise than Doug Williams. Man. No black quarterback knows how to do it better. And the aura, and he's a living legend.
Yes, sir.
That we don't talk about enough. That I'm saying that if you look back over the maturation of Jaden Daniels, the reason why Jaden Daniels was successful in his first year as a Washington franchise quarterback that may have eluded an RG3 or a Jason Campbell or a Dwayne Haskins or any of the ones before him was Doug Williams being embraced versus what the other ownership group did and just basically disrespected and disregarded that man. Right? For him to be back in the building where he belongs, mentoring and making sure that those players, especially that quarterback, his head was on straight. He was off social media, knowing what he had to do. And again, Bobby Wagner came in later on to mentor him on the field. But to know that you're coming to a franchise that one of the best to ever do it was there to lead you every step of the way, I wanted to make sure that I ended this podcast or any show that I'm in, especially during Black History Month, to give honor and reverence to Doug Williams, because what he has done for this franchise, even when he was disrespected, what he and other people have done for this franchise needs to be said and needs to be said often.
All right. Give me some hand claps, Ken.
Absolutely. No problem with that.
Yeah. Well, Lou, man, that is awesome. And couldn't have said it better ourselves, man. And with you being in the building, you obviously have a front row seat to witness a lot of that. And, we hear stories that he's kind of pulled Jayden on his wing, but to know that it's been to the extent in which it has been, man, that is awesome to hear. Because, again, for those that have been around for a long time, we know what Doug Williams represents to this organization, man. So thank you for sharing that to us. And not only that story, but your insight, but also thank you once again for joining us on the show, man. We appreciate you. And you have an open invitation to come back anytime, man. We have your contact information, and we will certainly take you up on the offer and reach out to you whenever we can. So
I appreciate it.
Appreciate you joining
having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
We'll wrap up the show. Lou, if you want to stay on afterwards to talk for a second, that's good. But thanks, everybody, for listening. Until next time, peace out, knuckleheads.
Peace out, y'all.